not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump.
If Kamala Harris gets in, she would be the most radical far-left extremist ever to occupy the White House times 10.
They know he is easy to manipulate with flattery and favors. They know Trump won't hold autocrats accountable because he wants to be an autocrat himself.
There's never been a lunatic like this in the White House, and we've had some bad ones.
It's on, it's dirty, it's personal, it's dog eat dog.
So now we have a new victim to defeat. Lion Kamala Harris, Lion, L-Y-I-N apostrophe.
He was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse.
Got a new line, you know, she's going, I'm the prosecutor. She's one of the worst prosecutors in history.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, blue versus red. Nothing, it seems, is off limits. But who is riding momentum?
New poll out today, battleground states show an incredibly tight race between the vice president and the former president.
You decide. A new poll out this morning is showing Donald Trump still has the edge.
We begin tonight with the panic that seems to be setting in inside MAGA world, where Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz's polls, TV ratings, and momentum are causing what can only be described as anxiety, doubt, and nothing short of a freak out on the pro-Trump side.
Kia ora, I'm Amanda Gillies on The Detail today. The US election is now less than 2 months away. The campaign season is heating up and the gloves are well and truly off. We look at the polls, the trends, the fights, the fallouts, and who is likely to be the next president of the United States.
Oh, it's a great question. I love it when you start with the hard ones.
That's legal and political analyst Danielle McLaughlin, a Kiwi based in New York. She leans towards the sea of blue.
Very hard because it's a very, very tight race. Based on what we see at the moment, based on polling, I think it's Harris's to lose. She has the momentum, which we're seeing in both nationwide polling and also in the very important sort of swing states, the 7 swing states. There's an energy and a directness about her campaign that is lacking on the Trump side, and actually polling indicates that as well. So people have a sense that her campaign is being run better than the Trump campaign. He's a little bit off his game. He thought he was going to be up against Biden. But what I see right now, I think it's Harris, but you know, by a nose.
So right now, if I had to bet, I'd say 55-45, 60-40, Trump wins.
That's Republican strategist John Jordan, red through and through. We will hear more from him soon. But for now, the Democrats and opinion polls have moved in their direction in the week since President Biden stepped aside and after Harris took centre stage at the Democrats' National Convention.
Are you ready to make your voices heard? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it?
What I find interesting, I watched most of the Democratic National Convention and there was a lot of joy there and it was fabulous. But joy is not a policy and policy seems to be light on the ground with Harris. How problematic is this?
It's a good question. She does, you're right, talk a lot about things like freedom. She talks about solutions. And what we're also seeing is that she's drifting into the middle. So this reversal on her policy on fracking, she now says that she's for it. She's become a bit more hardline on Israel, perhaps, than she was. But we're also seeing it on the Republican side. I think both sides understand that the middle is where this is going to be won this year. And so, you know, can she, in the upcoming debate, can she defend these changing positions? I think she probably can. But hope does matter and energy does matter, and it will get people out to vote. And we saw this with President Obama, for example, in 2008, 2007 for election in 2008. You know, people love Trump, not necessarily for his policies, but because they identify with him or they think he stands for things that they stand for. You know, he talked a lot about draining the swamp. So I I would say that it's important to folks like you and me and the people who watch these races really clearly, but actually things like hope and joy, or sometimes anger, and a sense of shared disillusionment do move the needle with voters.
What about the major issues? What are they? What is driving this election this year?
You know, it's immigration. It's always immigration. And Harris is sort of, I would say, hardened up her stance on immigration. People care a lot about Ukraine and vast amounts of American money going overseas to fight no longer forever wars because we're out of Afghanistan, but certainly as it relates to Ukraine and what's happening in Gaza, there are very strong feelings on both sides about what the next president is going to do about these two very, very serious issues. The economy always matters. You know, the old adage that people's wallets are drivers in what sends them to the ballot box is also very important. And, you know, depending on where the economy is, if you're the incumbent, it can be a blessing or a curse. And incumbents typically have advantages in elections. This is why we see more two-term presidents than one-term presidents. But Harris is a funny one, of course, because she's the VP, not a sitting president. So those, I would say, are the big ones.
What about the swing states or the so-called battlegrounds? What are the significance of these in this elections? Talk us through this.
Right. So there are 7 swing states, and depending on how strong the Democratic candidate is, there can be sort of the entire 7 in play, which includes states in the Northeast, such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, going into sort of the Midwest, Wisconsin. But it's just really tight, Amanda. There's no other way I can put it. And there was more polling again out today that just shows that people have really dug in. I think this is representative of how polarized America is politically, and it's becoming more and more, and this has been happening over decades. People are dug in, so it's going to be people who don't typically vote. I think that it's going to make all the difference. And these swing states matter more than, you know, Florida or California. We know California is going to go to the Democrat. We know Florida's going to go to the Republicans.
So just how ugly, Danielle, how ugly, ruthless and personal will this campaign get? What are you expecting?
You know, I think the debate upcoming on September 10th is going to be a really good lens into how these candidates are going to sort of continue on in these next 60 or so days. We know what to expect from Donald Trump. This is what has made him so successful. He doesn't pull any punches. He tells it the way that he calls it as he sees it. And he has certainly not been shy in attacking Kamala Harris on the basis of her race or her gender. And in addition to, you know, her record as a district attorney or as a federal prosecutor. It's all on the table.
In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Why insult her intelligence?
Well, I don't think she's a very bright person. I do feel that. I mean, I think that's right. I think I am a very bright person, and a lot of people say that. I don't think she's a very bright person. And you know what? Our country needs a very smart person, and I don't think she's a very smart person. So I'm not looking to, I don't consider that an insult. That's just a fact.
John Jordan agrees with Trump on that.
Oh, it's absolutely a fact. She's not bright. She failed the California bar exam the first time. I didn't. I passed it the first time. You have to name for me one thing that she has done in her career that one would truly call visionary, insightful, or some achievement that you would credit to her. She is the reason for that she's failed upwards her entire career is that she comes from California, where I'm sitting right now, and it's a blue state. It's uncontested, so there are no real elections per se because the Republicans are going to lose every time. So anytime you have a state that's dominated by one party or the other, and this exists in some red states too, so just to be fair, what you end up getting is not the best politicians or the best and brightest. You get the ones that are, for whatever reason, able to work the system and get the nomination for that next office because it's an insider game, because the election's outcomes are already decided. So in this case, she was literally, and this is a public fact, and it's not opinion, she was the mayor of San Francisco's girlfriend. She worked at the district attorney's office. He got her set up to run for district attorney for the county of San Francisco. And then she climbed the Democrat ladder, became attorney general for California, in a race that no Republican has won in 4 decades. In fact, she almost even managed to lose one of those races. She did that twice, which is the maximum amount you're allowed to under California law. And then she won a U.S. Senate race. So since you can't lose as a Democrat, it's about who gets the nomination. And that's all inside baseball in blue states like California. And it's also kind of true in red states, but that's just not the case here.
The feeling on the ground, John, what is it like in the States today, 2 months out from the election? How are people feeling? How is Trump being viewed? How is Kamala being viewed?
You know, it's just funny. That's a great question. This feels very different from 2020. It's more like 2016. 2020, if you'll think back, it was the times were very hot. After George Floyd, you had the riots, you had the ends, you had lockdowns. The race was a lot more heated. This is a lot less intense. The real story here, and I think that the thing to look for in how this race resolves, and will decide it whether Kamala Harris wins or whether Trump wins, and this is why I think there's a high degree of uncertainty, is on of the issues. You asked American voters, and this is poll after poll after poll. I'm not citing one or partisan polls. There's a avalanche of data on this. The 3 most important issues to Americans right now are the economy, immigration, and crime, kind of in that order, more or less, but with the economy number 1 in every survey. And Donald Trump is favored, or is viewed as the candidate best able to handle those issues by 8 to 14 points, depending on which one you look at. But 99% of the surveys, that falls within that range. And then you compare that to the horse race. Kamala versus Trump, where you see her slightly ahead, but well within any statistically significant margin nationally, and even to behind in the swing states. But the way the math works out on that is you have 4 to 6% of the population that is saying, or at least telling pollsters right now, that they agree with Trump on issues, but they're going to vote for her. So what you get here is a tension between these two numbers. So you have this percentage of the population, 4 to 6 percent, that are saying they're going to vote for her even though they don't agree with her on the issues. So the contest between now and November becomes, is Trump able to create a permission structure or win them back over, or give those 4 to 6 percent of the population a reason to vote the way they say they will, the way they to vote their preferences on the issues? Or in the case of Kamala Harris, her challenge is the inverse, and that is to kind of keep this, to stay inside the media bubble right now where she's protected, not have to answer any questions, and not have to state any policy positions, and just kind of run out the clock. And that is really the battle that's going to be fought here in the next 60 days.
Is Trump off his game now that Biden's gone? Is he off his game at the moment?
Donald Trump is actually doing a smart thing right now. He is making it about the issues. He is kind of keeping his head down. And I know, because I know the people that are running his campaign, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita and Vince Haley. And what they're telling him right now is, talk about the issues. Do not let it become personal, because that's what she wants, because that's what Kamala wants, because she's undefined, she's protected by the media. And the more that it's about individual personalities, that plays to her advantage. The more it's about issues, the more Trump wins. So that's why he's kind of keeping his head down.
Look, he has a lock on these non-college graduate white male voters, but the women vote. How does he get that? And that is crucial.
So the 2024 race is a very different animal than 2020. And anybody that wants to look back at 2020 and try to draw a straight line is kidding themselves. So as you point out, Trump does very well with non-college white voters. But unlike 2020, he's even with Latino male voters, and he's even got almost a quarter of black male voters. So it's not just white male voters now. It is a growing number of male voters across the spectrum. Now, obviously, Kamala Harris has is doing very, very well with the women's vote, and Trump's doing very well with the men's vote.
Trump and Harris will finally face off this week for the much-anticipated debate, but naturally, there's been much debate about the debate.
But will they or will they not debate? Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are scheduled to face off on September 10th, but a behind-the-scenes squabble could derail the whole thing.
The latest feud between the Trump and Harris campaigns could keep the candidates off the debate stage.
This former president is so scared to get on the debate stage.
I think they'll do anything they can to try to get out of a debate with President Trump.
But who needs the debate more? Is that Trump or Harris?
I think Trump needs it more in the sense that she has this momentum. She needs it too, you know. This is about optics. She's a woman. Americans have never, ever elected a woman. She needs to show folks that she can stand up to him, like she would stand up to any other world leader, ostensibly, you know, in the interests of America.
You're going to look for Kamala Harris to try to have a viral moment where she is the alpha, where she gets the better in on some sort of viral zinger. That's what she's going to try to do. At the same time, she's going to try to avoid talking about issues. She's going to try to pretend that she is the candidate of change. This is what she's been doing so far. It's disingenuous and untrue, but it's the smart thing for her to do. President Trump, on the other hand, his challenge is not to give her that sort of viral moment, not to come off as too obnoxious, and to kind of stick to the issues and almost prosecute the case, to almost give the viewer or the public a permission structure to vote for him. That maybe, you know, I'm here. It's not about whether I'm the best man. It's not about whether she's the best woman. This is about you, the American voter. What's in your interests? Are you going to vote for fluff, or are you going to actually vote for your safety, your pocketbook, and the well-being of your family? That's the case that President Trump's going to try to make on September 10th.
The debate, much debate about the debate, especially the muted mic. Has that been resolved yet? What can we expect?
And that's fluid right now. I think that Kamala Harris would prefer not to debate, but at the same time, she wants to kind of pin the blame for that on Trump. So you're looking at this kind of shadow boxing right now between the two campaigns about the rules and how the rules and how they're going to be and how so that maybe one side gets an out. I tend to think if I was advising Kamala Harris that she's better off not debating, because every time she has been on a national stage, even when she was running as a Democrat senator, in 2020 against Joe Biden, debates have never been her forte. And she's always collapsed. Remember when she launched her presidential race in 2019 to much fanfare, huge amounts of money raised, and she collapsed before the first votes were cast in the Democrat primary, because a lot of Democrat voters found that a little bit of Kamala goes a long way. And so I think that's why they've kept her away from the press. And I know that's been covered in New Zealand and Australia, is that they've kept her away from press. They won't let her do solo press conference. They need to keep her away from the media and keep her on a script. Debate, they can't protect her as much, and there's a lot more downside to her than upside.
A week after the debate, Trump's set to be sentenced for falsifying records in the Stormy Daniels case. She's the adult film star. He's trying to get sentencing delayed.
His diehard supporters don't care, but most people do care. And it plays both ways. People have very strong opinions about him one way or another. But, you know, whatever happens, it's going to just confirm whatever sort of bias about him you have, right? Either it was the system that took him down and he shouldn't have been prosecuted and it was just a business deal, or, you know, however you want to sort of characterize it, or this is somebody who doesn't have any respect for the rule of law, and this is not somebody who should be president.
Once again, there's a divide between what the pundit class in America thinks and then what actually happens. Is that if you compare Trump's polling averages, again, the Real Clear Politics average of polls, not Republican polls, not Democrat polls, but every poll mixed together, every time Trump had a court appearance, his numbers went up, not down. And I realize it's counterintuitive, and it's counterintuitive to me too, but it's still a fact. And so if you're President Trump, on President Trump's side, which I am, I'm not sure what you wish for.
How does he get the women vote? Because surely that's a problem.
The women are flocking to Harris. So he has a disadvantage anyway, just based on prior conduct and how people viewed him. But her entering the race has made that gap even bigger. So women are flocking to Harris, and they're really deserting him. But what he is trying to do is moderate his message, on reproductive rights, on things like IVF, which his running mate, J.D. Vance, has, talked about making it, outlawed.
Get this, he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds.
So he's pulling away from that very sort of strict conservative line within his party and trying to moderate his messages around some issues that, you know, don't only impact women, but maybe impact women disproportionately, but impact men and impact families. And people care about that as they should.
He does have a lock on non-college sort of graduate white male voters. How much of a problem is this for Harris, and how does she win them over?
2 words, Tim Walz. Yeah. That was a very, very important decision, obviously. Although, you know, people say vice president choices don't matter, but I don't tend to agree with them. But Tim Walz was very specifically chosen. He's a white guy from a Midwestern state, and he balances the ticket. She's from California. It's considered a very, very liberal state. And he has more moderate positions than her on some issues. So Tim Walz is their hoped for solution to the great success and, you know, loyalty that Trump has from the white working class voter.
Do you wish for someone else to be the Republican candidate? In all honesty, is Trump truly as good as it gets for America and the Republicans?
No, he is the nominee. That is not going to change. And any desire, wish, or expression to the contrary is mere wish casting. This is what was chosen. The American media and the foreign media especially misunderstand the Trump phenomenon. They think it's all about the man, when in fact, and they don't understand Trump supporters. Trump supporters are actually supportive of a set of ideas, and they have a deep-seated unhappiness with what the modern Democrat Party has become. They are more actually like Republicans now. That's how out of whack the left is. The left can't even define what a woman is. So this old wacky gender ideology and all this other kind of stuff and high taxes and now price fixing is not where the Democrat Party traditionally has been. And so you see a lot of people like the so-called white non-college voters. Keep in mind, 20 years ago, they were the backbone of the Democrat Party. So that's something to think about when looking at how the sands of time have shifted and where the parties stand relative to each other.
That's all for today. The Detail is a newsroom production supported by RNZ and New Zealand On Air. Thank you to Danielle McLaughlin and John Jordan. This episode was produced by Davina Zimmer and Alexia Russell and engineered by Jeremy Veal. I'm Amanda Gillies. Matua.